Hi guys, this is Dr. Gonzalez here, and in this video I'm going to walk you through some of the beginning points that you need to keep in mind when you get ready to go write your research paper. The research paper won't be due until the end of class, the last week of class. It'll be due on July 25th. I provide you with a lot of resources. There's a template that you'll have access to. There's going to be this presentation as well. And then you also have Baldwin's book, the Writing Your Psychology Research Paper. I would highly recommend hanging on to that book if you plan to go to grad school. You'll also have access to your APA style guide that should help you along the way. Additionally, I'm going to put a template in Canvas. You won't need to turn that, I'm sorry, not a template, but an outline in Canvas. You don't have any assignments related to that outline, but it's just something new that I'm trying out to try to give as many guidance tools as I can to my students as they get ready to write their paper. Now, surprisingly enough, you've already written about half of your paper. By the time you get to watch this video, you should be around week 4 of the class. So we're about halfway through. Everything you have been doing has helped you prepare in some way for writing a part of your paper. So if you compiled all those parts together, you've probably got a rough draft for about a half, maybe a little more of the paper done. So in this presentation, I want you to put those pieces together in your mind so you can see what you've done and what you have left to do as we move into July, because we're going to totally shift gears in July and start working on our statistics, our descriptive and inferential statistics as they relate to experimental research designs. Now, of those statistics, you're going to have one that you're going to select for your paper, but I don't expect you to select it until you've seen how to do it. So there are going to be some parts of this presentation that you haven't seen before, or you don't know what you're going to be expected to write, and that's okay. That's why I'm giving you this presentation. So first I wanted to review a little bit about Baldwin Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. This says Chapter 3, but it also has a little bit of Chapter 4 in it. Go back and read those two chapters. Chapter 3 focuses on writing and organizing your ideas and creating that thesis statement, which, by the way, you've already done the thesis. And then Chapter 4 talks about the actual components of the paper, and then the rest of this presentation will walk you through the components as they appear in my template. So the first thing I want to go back and review a little bit is the article summaries. During the first week of class, which probably seems very long ago, I asked you to find 5 peer-reviewed journal articles and to summarize them and tell me how they would help you write your paper. Some of you guys hit the mark on that. Some of you were a little off, and that's okay because everybody's got to start somewhere, right? But at this point in time, you should have 5 papers, and you need to go back and make sure that you've summarized those papers. Now, you need to be preparing yourself to build up to at least 10, because even though the literature review that you're going to write is going to be very limited, I still need you to draw upon more than just 5 papers to justify why your research needs to be conducted. So if you want to know more about the article summaries, you can go back and look at Baldwin Chapter 3, and the next couple of slides is going to come from that book. So your literature review is going to be built off of your summaries, and that's going to be the first part of your paper in the introduction. So there are 4 questions that you need to address in your summaries, because these are going to help you be able to write a logical flow about the research that's already been done on your topic. And those questions are: what are the research questions? What are the constructs and variables that the person studied? What methods and designs did they use? What were their results, and how does this contribute to your paper? Now, when you write your literature review, you're going to talk about these 3 things, but you're not going to tell me how this contributes to your paper. That's just kind of a thinking point for you so that you can look at the article, look at the summary, and figure out kind of metacognitively where that's going to fit in. So you can take the questions from the last slide and you could throw them in a Word document and you could complete them for each article. So you would put the questions in, answer them, hit enter, do the same thing for the next article, and repeat. And so by the time you submit your paper, you should have at least 10 articles. And that's not going to include a reference that you're going to include for Jamovi, which is going to be your statistical software, and your measurement tools. When you're writing your introduction, you're going to start by bringing up the broad concepts that are your constructs. You're going to walk through the research that's been done, and you're going to culminate with your research question and hypothesis. Another word for that research question is going to be your thesis statement. This is really pretty simple in this particular paper because it has a specific purpose. You're proposing an experimental research study that's going to explore that research question. So as you get to the end of your literature review, you're going to transition to a final paragraph where you're going to introduce your topic. And you're going to basically just say, my research topic is, or my research question is, and then list it out. And then you're going to present your hypothesis using a sentence, not that null and alternative format. You're going to basically have a sentence that says, my hypothesis is that people will sleep better after they take the Somnulex medication. It's generic and it's using words. Don't worry, I'm going to have an example of this in a paper that I will share with you later on. Now, I mentioned earlier in the video that I want you to look at I see a mistake here. It says cavernous. My bad. I guess PowerPoint doesn't recognize cavernous when it should be Canvas. But anyway, I'm going to include this outline template that you can use. If you want to see how to apply an outline, you can look at page 62 of Baldwin. So you can download this template and you can use it as you see fit. You might want to go in and type notes or comments under each section. It's all up to you. I'm not asking you to fill out this outline and return it to me. It's just a tool for you to use in your own process. Now, chapter 4 of Baldwin goes into the structure of a research paper. And the general structure of your paper is going to be pretty much the same. But I've already given you a specific template in Canvas that is formatted with the parts you need. Please use the template. Don't deviate from it. Don't add things to it. Don't take things away from it. When I go to grade your paper, I'm going to be grading on the specific pieces that were in the template. So if you accidentally delete something or you add something to it that shouldn't be there, it throws me off. So let's go over the specific parts that you would see in that outline and in the template. You're going to start out by an abstract. Now, an abstract is very short. It's usually less than 150 words, and it's better to write it after you're finished with your paper than it is to write it at the beginning. Because it's so short, it's really only going to mention your research question, tell me about your hypothesis, briefly introduce your methodology, analytical plan, and your discussion of your potential results. You're only going to have 1 or 2 sentences for each one of those topics. And when you see the template, you will notice it is not indented. And by the way, the entire paper is double-spaced. From there, you move into the first page of the template, and it's the introduction, although it does not use a header. There will not be a header there that says introduction, because in APA 7, it's assumed that the first section after the title is going to be your introduction. And there are 3 basic things that your introduction is going to include. You're going to have a literature review where you're telling me about those summaries that you already compiled and how that body of research is going to form your research question. You're going to then transition and introduce your research question. And then you're going to introduce your hypothesis using very generic, very general terms. From there, you move into the methodology section. This is the largest section of your paper. If you have a methodology section in another class, it might look a little bit different. Please use the template because it includes the required components for this research paper. Now, the first part under the methodology is your study design. In this class, you have 2 choices. It's either between subjects or within subjects. I need you to justify why this design is going to work for you. Tell me why you selected it. Highlight the disadvantages and the advantages of using it and any concerns that you might have. This is all going to come from the assignment that corresponds to this week, assignment 4, okay? The next part of your methodology will be your variables and definitions. There's 3 general parts. You're going to tell me about your IV, and you're going to provide me with an operational definition and tell me about the conceptual and theoretical definitions. Then you're going to tell me the levels of that IV. We also went over that this week. You're then going to do the dependent variable, giving me an operational definition and conceptual and theoretical definitions. And then in a third paragraph, you're going to talk about any control variables that need to be taken into consideration with regard to completing the study. Now, the next part of your methodology is your hypotheses. This should come from your assignment number 3. You're going to list your null and your alternative hypothesis, and there's a specific format for writing them, and it's already formatted in the template. And then you're going to go to a paragraph underneath that and give me a general explanation of both of those hypotheses using words. Next, you have your participants in sampling. It should be about 2 really big paragraphs. First, you're going to describe your population. Then you're going to describe your sampling method, and you're going to justify it. This should also come from, I believe it's week 3's assignment. The next portion is the measurement tools, also under methodology. This should come from week 2's assignment. You're going to tell me a description of your tools or your test that you're using, describe the reliability and the validity of it, and make sure you cite it in text and provide a reference on your reference page. Then you move into the validity. This should have also been from week 2. Address all 4 forms of validity. Make sure you define it and include threats, and then address them. And the 4 validities are construct, statistical, external, and internal validity. Then you're going to move into the methodology section. This is going to be pretty new to you. So you're going to write about IRB. This was gone over in the ethics section. You're going to basically tell me that your research project is going to be approved by an institutional review board before you begin because it deals with human subjects. You're going to address the components of an IRB application, and you're going to tell me about getting that approval. And part of that process is coming up with the informed consent. Now, you don't have to come up with an informed consent page. You do need to talk in your procedures about how informed consent will be obtained, that your participants have the right to withdraw, that this is voluntary, any sort of compensation that you're giving them. You're going to list that in that informed consent paragraph. Then you're going to transition into how you're going to randomize your participants. Now, in the sampling, you talked about how you would recruit them. Now you're going to tell me, after they're recruited, how are you randomizing them? Because randomization is a component of an experiment. And then in the final portion, you're going to walk me through, step by step, how you are going to conduct your procedures. From the moment that participant signs that informed consent to the moment that you've got their data in your computer. What do they do? You have to write it to where someone else could read it and actually carry out the experiment for you without having to ask you any questions. And you'll see in the example paper that I post what that looks like. Next, you're going to write your analytical plan. We have not addressed these things yet because we haven't moved into the statistics portion of the course. But you're going to tell me what descriptive statistics you're going to run on your data. You're going to also tell me what inferential statistic you're going to use. It's more than likely going to be a t-test or an ANOVA. You're going to list your p-level of significance. So that's going to judge your decision about what you do from hypothesis testing. And you're going to take that and tell me how you're going to make a decision about whether to reject your null or fail to reject your null. And then the final portion of writing for your paper is going to be the discussion. You're going to tell me how this contributes to the body of knowledge, what it means if you're going to reject the null, what it might mean if you fail to reject the null, the limitations of your study, and ways you might change your study in the future. And I forgot to add a slide about the final portion of the paper, which is going to be your references page. Basically, you're going to list all of your references using correct APA notation, a hanging indent, double spaced, proper capitalization, proper use of italics, and the DOIs at the end. Please make sure you put them in alphabetical order. I have people who wrote beautiful papers in the past and then got to the references and just completely forgot to put it in alphabetical order. So that's it for that portion. There is not a corresponding assignment for this. There is one for this week. It is going to focus on your methodology though. So if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out, and I hope you've enjoyed listening to this video. Take care.